Chapter 9. Arms crossed, foot pounding against the pavement, and leaning against a stone pillar, you watched Akabane approach you. Your eyes turned to slits. Took you long enough. He shrugged and said nothing as you fell into step beside him. I wasn't aware I had a time limit. You scoffed and ignored his obvious accusation. For the record, you had not been timing him. You had walked around the mall a bit, stopped to get boba, and continued window shopping until you'd gotten a message from Akabane to meet you in the outdoor cafe. You passed the other pillars, heading back into the mall. What were you two doing? Akabane said simply, talking. Yeah, I got that. What about? Akabane slid his mercury eyes over to you, something unreadable floating in them. It made you falter a bit, and though you kept your feet under you, your arms uncrossed and fell to your side. Where are we going? You were annoyed at yourself for giving in first, but Akabane made no comment about it. His eyes left yours as he looked forward once more. The cafe. I'm sure you're hungry. He hesitated a minute. Or have you eaten already? You shook your head, though he couldn't see it. Just a boba. His head bobbed as if he nodded slightly. What about you? Weren't you eating in that cafe with Rio? Akabane shook his head, a visible answer now. We were only there for space. He sketched a brow. Didn't you eat there? You shook your head, voicing your answer. No, just another drink. Akabane halted his steps so abruptly, the other people behind him almost bumped into him. You glared, grabbing his arm to pull him aside. You spied an open sitting area and darted toward it. Akabane didn't resist your tugging, but even if he had, you would have only tightened your grip. You sat him down on a single couch and sat in the one beside it. You crossed your legs and turned toward him. There were two men across from you, but you paid them no mind. Go on, ask. You motioned with your hand. He rolled his eyes. You're the most dramatic person I've ever met. You know that? You sketched a brow this time and asked, Kaede? Other than her, yes. He waved you off and you smiled in victory, but it didn't last long. What were you doing in the cafe in the first place? What does it matter? What's important is what you were doing there with Rio. Akabane looked away, a blush coating his pale cheeks. For a moment, your stomach twisted, but you willed it to stop. Medicine. You would take some medicine later. Akabane, you ground out, but it came almost as a whisper. He looked at you and cleared his throat. What I do in my spare time is my business. If you are so curious, ask Rio yourself. His words were bitter as they pierced your heart deeply. You were confused for a moment, confused as to why his words hurt so much. You looked down, unable to meet his gaze. You sucked in a breath and said, Fine. It may have been wobbly, and it may have been agonizingly embarrassing, but you stood and started for the mall's exit. Where are you going? He stood, calling after you. You quickened your footsteps, hating that tears threatened to spill from your eyes. You didn't even know why you were sad, or why you were crying. You heard footsteps gaining on you, not running, but speed walking. You began sprinting for the bathrooms. You turned a corner, near to the front of the mall, and rushed down the long hallway. You saw the sign and twisted the doorknob, hoping no one was occupying it. Thankfully, no one was. You shut the door and locked it just in time. Akabane began banging on the door lightly. Ellen? Go away. That was all you could think to say. Ellen, listen. He continued banging. You turned on the sink, splashing water onto your face. I'm going to the bathroom. Ellen, I'm not stupid. He sighed, his banging depleting. You looked into the mirror, your eyes barely red-rimmed. Akabane, it seemed, had left, though you weren't dumb enough to hope for such a blessing. You knew once you opened that door again, you would be faced with the unknown, because you truly had no idea what kind of emotion made you feel this way. Hurt, Maybe disappointment. You schooled your face into neutrality and braced yourself for the inevitable. Akabane was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed as he watched you with unflinching eyes. You forced yourself to look him in the eye. He watched you, his mouth in a thin line. Weird. This was weird. Akabane didn't make you cry. You didn't make Akabane cry. Never has one of you ever made the other feel inferior. This was a new, weird, and uncharted territory. Though none of your small remarks or jabs at each other in the past, no matter how cruel, made you feel anything but annoyance. They were all about insignificant things you didn't care half a penny about. This was different. This you actually cared about. You had asked him a genuine question, and he had answered you like he always did. It was annoying, and it pissed you off. Your eyes narrowed to a point where you could barely see, but you didn't care. You marched up to him, teeth gritted so hard they could crack. You lifted your chin, eyes darting up at him. He backed into the wall, behind him as if cowering. But his arms stayed crossed. You didn't look down at them as you said, "I really hate you." And today just reminded you why. You held that position for a few seconds, breathing in every last breath he let out. Eyes so sharp they could cut skin. To his credit, Akabane didn't look away, nor did he say anything back. At least, you thought he understood he was a bastard. You almost spat at him. Almost. You backed out of his personal space and watched his chest rise and fall in a steady rhythm. You let out a disgusted sound and walked away. A few minutes later, when you were in the parking lot, your phone beeped. You pulled it out and cleared away all the missed notifications from Rio, a little annoyed with her, too, at the moment. Your eyes narrowed and your heartbeat picked up. Bastard. Then you blocked Akabane's phone number.